Welcome back. Here we're going to cover section 1.4, conjunctions. We are working on chapter 1 and we've talked about section 1, sentences, statements, and propositions. You're familiar with sentences. Statements are sentences that can be true or false. Propositions are the meaning or what the sentence expresses. Then we talked about simple and complex statements. Simple statements have one logical component. Complex statements have more than one. And you might think about it by reviewing when you're looking at a statement. Does it have a negation, a conjunction, a disjunction, or a conditional? And is it a propositional attitude? If it contains one of the complexities and it's not a propositional attitude, then it's complex. If it contains none of the complex connectives, not, and, or, if, then it's simple. And then we began reviewing these types of complex statements. We looked at negations in the last video. Now we're going to look at conjunctions. All right, so we are going to work at recognizing and translating conjunctions. A complex statement whose logical components are connected by and is called a conjunction. And then we have this little note just to plant a seed in your mind that conjunction is true only when all of its conjuncts are true. So a conjunction is true when all of its conjuncts are true. The symbol for a conjunction is the ampersand. We'll also work with the plus if you can't make an ampersand, and it's translated as and. So a conjunction represented by the symbol ampersand translates as and. So we have an example here. I like apples and oranges. And we're going to introduce you early to logical shorthand. The logical shorthand for this is going to be A and O, where A equals and. Here is a point to remember. When using logical shorthand, your letters must represent statements. So your impulse might be to have A equal apples, but apples is not a statement, so it has to be a statement. So A equals I like apples. So what does O equal? I like oranges. You got it. And now we're going to look at the truth conditions for a conjunction. Now we've said this just a few slides back, but we want to reiterate. Conjunctions are true if and only if all of their conjuncts are true. So we have a statement here at the top right of our table, P and Q. Then we have the possible values for P and the possible values for Q. And the only time P and Q is true is when all of its conjuncts are true. So one of its conjuncts is P, one of its conjuncts is Q. So in this first row, you see P is true, Q is true, and because of this, P and Q is true. Again, conjunctions are true if and only if all their conjuncts are true. And we only have that in this first instance. For conjunctions to be true, all of its conjuncts or parts must be true. And this table on the right here is called a truth table, and we will be looking at those in depth in section 2.9. So for our homework, it's suggested that you read the textbook, page 6 through 16, as well as the study guide, section 1.3. And then the homework asks you to do the following. A, rewrite each of the following as compound statement of simple statements or negations connected by and. So what they want you to do is break up all the parts connected by the word and. So if I said I liked apples, oranges, and bananas, there are three parts to that. I like apples, and I like oranges, and I like bananas. So I want you to take all of the logical parts, separate them by and. But it also wants to demonstrate to you a problem that occurs when you do this. B, briefly describe how the resulting conjunction may fail to capture the meaning of the original. You may use capital letters to stand for simple statements, but indicate what simple statements are signified by your letters. So you can start practicing with this logical shorthand, but whenever you use logical shorthands, you must define your letters, and your letters must equal statements. So 2 parts to the homework. Rewrite, breaking out all the logical components, connecting them by and then describe how the meaning changes. Let's look at some examples. You and I will be enemies someday. So we have an and, it's a conjunction, indicates this is a complex statement. This complex statement has 2 parts. We want to break those 2 parts out and connect them by and. And what we get looks something like this. You will be an enemy someday, and I will be an enemy someday. And our logical shorthand might look something like, in the parentheses here, Y and I. But remember, if you're going to use logical shorthand, you got to define your letters. So Y equals you will be an enemy someday, I equals I will be an enemy someday. Then we move on to part B, which asks, does the meaning change? Does the meaning change? And I think here, let me read the original for you, and then I'll read the translation. You and I will be enemies someday. You will be an enemy someday. I will be an enemy someday. Hopefully you can hear the difference. In the original, it seems quite clear that we will be each other's enemies. When you say you and I will be enemies someday, you mean we will be each other's enemies. Whereas when you say you will be an enemy someday and I will be an enemy someday, that aspect of it is lost, where it just perhaps means that you will be somebody's enemy someday and I will be somebody's enemy someday. But it loses that idea that we will be each other's enemy. Okay, so you're going to probably move on to homework 1.4 now, and I want to encourage you to remember that there's 2 parts. Divide all the logical components up, connect them by and then explain how the meaning changes. There was a famous women's band called Salt and Peppa. If I were to give you the original statement, I went to see Salt and Peppa, you would not translate that into I went to see salt and I went to see pepper, because the meaning would change. So you want to be very sensitive to that aspect of conjunctions that can logically be translated out, but the meaning is lost. Because when we evaluate the truth or falsity of statements, you can't logically translate the statement into a statement that contains a different proposition, evaluate that, and say that you've evaluated the original. All right, hope you have a great day. Bye.